Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the first time if you're new here. My name is Bryn and I make videos about queer stuff. So today what I wanted to talk about is my understanding of my gender at this point in my life. I have been doing like exploration within the past few years regarding gender identity and like different pronouns and stuff like that. And I know I've touched upon it like briefly in some videos, but I wanted to make like a whole video dedicated to it. So that is what this video is. Before we get started though, if you want to follow me on my boring ass social media where I almost never post, this is my username. Like I said, I'm very boring, but you're welcome to follow me if you're interested for whatever reason. But yeah, on that note, let's get started. So a very brief synopsis of my gender identity over the years. I was a gay twink as a teenager, and I came out as a trans woman when I was 18, came out as non-binary at 21, and now I'm like, I guess I didn't really like come out, but I feel like a woman and a non-binary person at the same time. And I wanted to like get into like how I figured that out, or like the whole process of that. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So I guess I'll start with like how I feel right now, and then I'll get into like all the stuff of like how did I come to this conclusion. So like I said, I feel like a non-binary person and a woman at the same time, which was difficult for me to process or like come to terms with, because when I was out as non-binary, my understanding of my non-binariness was like a gender neutral or genderless person, and to me that felt contradictory to being a woman. I felt like I could only be one or the other, even though non-binary is a very like broad term. My like version of it for myself felt like it excluded womanhood from it. So I've had signs, there have been signs in my life, throughout all my life, that are like expressive of traditional femininity and also expressive of like androgyny or like tomboyness or whatever. And when I was growing up as a boy, I felt really comfortable in androgyny, and I have cystic fibrosis, which if you don't know what that is, it's a condition that makes my lungs suck ass, and it also makes it very difficult for my body to absorb nutrients, which is not good, but it kind of worked out in my favor because I went through puberty and did not grow very much, and I don't think I had a lot of testosterone effects. Like my voice is a little deeper, but like there's female singers that can sing lower than I can. And I didn't grow much facial hair, mostly just a mustache that for some reason in 7th grade I refused to shave for like 6 months, and I looked so beyond crusty. And I didn't really grow tall. Like a lot of the men in my family are like tall. Like my brother is like 6'4" or something. I'm 5'6", so I'm like a normal height for a boy or a girl, and my body didn't grow super broad. Like I basically was able to remain in a relatively androgynous body simply because my body didn't have enough nutrients to grow into the like man that my genetics might have like wanted me to. So in that sense, my disability has been very helpful for me in regarding gender stuff. So because I was always really attracted to androgyny, I didn't get a lot of like dysphoria wearing men's clothes, and in fact I most of the time prefer to wear men's clothes. And there definitely like were signs of like there being like me having like a feminine nature. As a kid, I was traditionally feminine. I liked basically anything that a little girl would like is what I liked. I learned how to tuck when I was in maybe like 8th or 9th grade, and I would like tuck, not knowing I was trans, but I would tuck just because I had dysphoria, but didn't know what that was. I just knew that I felt better when I tucked. I always wanted long hair because to me that represented femininity, like specifically the idea of having long hair made me feel like a girl when I was a kid. And I told my parents when I was really young I wanted to be a girl, so you know, that's a pretty clear sign. But anyways, both of those things have been present throughout my life, all the way back through childhood and also as an adult. And so I'm not surprised that I've kind of settled into the labels of non-binary and woman. And also, I can't remember if I mentioned this yet, but I was out as a gay boy as a teenager, and now I understand myself to be a lesbian. And that definitely plays a part into how I understand my gender, which I'll get into in a little bit. I don't want to get into it yet. But I think most people grow up in a pretty binary understanding of the world because that's the world that we live in. And when I was first figuring out my trans identity, I felt very much like I had to reject anything that could be considered masculine. There was a lot of invalidation regarding my identity. Even before I heard the term trans or felt comfortable using the term trans, my family is Christian and not accepting of like gender nonconformity, and so there was a lot of suppression that I had to do on my part regarding the feminine parts of myself. And when I started to accept that those feminine parts were there, I felt like the only way to be accepted was to reject all of the masculine parts, which, fun fact, that didn't work anyways. The people who wanted to accept me however I am, and the people who didn't want to don't, regardless. So try to just live your life for you if that's something you're struggling with. Trying to appease the people who will never accept you or don't like you or hate you or whatever, like, it doesn't work. And it's better to just be yourself anyways, even if it did work. But anyways, so I was rejecting a lot of masculine stuff. Like, I remember when I came out as trans, at one point I was walking around Target and I was walking past the men's section, and I remember feeling really sad. I was like, because in my head, I was like, you can never shop there again. Like, you can never buy a men's t-shirt, a men's hoodie, whatever. Like, you can't wear men's clothes because you're a woman now and this is what you chose. And like, so it was very like restrictive. And I felt more trapped as a trans woman or as an out trans woman than I did as a closeted trans woman living as a gay boy. And that felt like horrible. And so when I started meeting non-binary people, I was like, oh my God, there's no fucking rules. And it was great. So I adopted the term non-binary, and I felt like so much freedom to just be whatever I wanted. But I did always have like a fear of being viewed as a man or as a boy. So I still did feel a little like trapped, like, oh, I can't be too much like this because I'll get called a boy or whatever. But eventually I started exploring my more like, I don't really call it masculine side because I don't feel masculine, but like externally it would probably fall under that category. Like, eventually my wardrobe shifted from being like almost all female to then being all male clothes. And I felt really good at that. Like, I had moved to a new city. It was at the beginning of COVID. Long story, but I moved there for several reasons. And it was a college town. And because it was at the beginning of COVID, basically all of the college students had gone home. And so there weren't many people living there. So I was able to really dress however I wanted. Like, I was going on walks a lot because it was like spring, summertime, but I didn't have to worry about what are people gonna think about me because the people weren't around. And I started getting really comfortable in like basically feeling like a butch lesbian and wearing like all men's clothing, wearing these fucking hats that I've worn in like half of my videos, and just like wearing a binder instead of like sports bras and stuff like that, like things that would be considered more masculine. But for me it felt androgynous, but also felt really freeing because I was like, I can do this. And I felt like I really had to explore that and like not reject my feminine side, although I low-key in some ways was, but I'll get into that. But more so just embracing being like a masculine Sapphic or like an androgynous Sapphic person. And also during this time, part of it I was broken up with an ex and then like we got back together somewhere in there. And that was the first woman I ever dated. And she was out as a lesbian at the time. I don't know if she still identifies that way or if she's, because I know she was kind of questioning like being more like pansexual or something. But anyways, being with a lesbian as a pre-op butch trans woman was very validating to me. And also just having someone close to me who understood my sexuality in like a personal way was so like relieving, I guess, to me. Like our sexuality was like, I want to be with a woman, I'm attracted to women, women are my priority, I wouldn't be with a man, but I still have confusing residual feelings for men that I think are compet, but I don't really know. That's kind of like how we were both feeling at the time. And it was really nice to have somebody who understood that and have it be somebody too that I was like really close to, obviously, because we were dating. And for me, like, my gender is tied to my sexuality. Like, when I was living as a gay guy, I thought that gay men wanted to be women. I didn't really understand when like gay men would date each other, because I thought that being a gay man meant that you wanted to date straight men, because that's how I felt, because I didn't want to be with a gay man because I didn't want to be with a man who liked men, because I'm not a man. And I remember my first boyfriend was gay. I more so felt pressure to date him just because I hate confrontation and I knew he liked me. And I remember like it was like a decent chunk through our relationship. We were together for almost a year, and this was maybe like 8 or 9 months in. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he basically conveyed to me that he wanted me to be the man in the relationship, or like that he wanted me to basically do all the things that a man would do in a heteronormative straight relationship. And I remember like being so baffled, like genuinely like in shock, because I could not understand why he would ever think that I would ever do any of those things or like want to do them. Like, because to me, I just always felt how I felt and like wanted to be the woman in the relationship. And I just thought that that was so obvious, but apparently it wasn't. I remember like that moment because it made me really dysphoric and also really confused as to why he would think that I would ever be the man in the relationship. And when I would think about being with men, like physically or even just romantically, like I felt like my girlhood was being expressed. And once I realized that most gay men like don't feel that way, and that it's because I'm trans, not because I'm gay, that I feel that way, I was able to kind of like take steps into transitioning, and to also understand that like you don't only have to express yourself as a girl in a relationship. You can just like always be a girl. That was very eye-opening to me, because I truly had no idea that anyone would expect me to follow suit of being like a masculine man. And then as I started transitioning, when I started medically transitioning, it was right before I turned 20, because I came out a few years before I started medically transitioning. And as soon as I started medically transitioning and the dysphoria started like falling away, I was like, oh my God, like, why do I like women so much? And why do I want to be with a woman? And why do I want to cuddle with a woman and play with her hair and kiss her and like all this stuff? And I was like, am I a lesbian? Like, what's happening right now? And my attraction to men was like, not necessarily, it wasn't gone at that point, but it was like not satisfying. And I don't know if that's because like me being gay and a repressed trans woman and like thinking about being with men made me feel like I could express my femininity, but then I came out as trans, so I felt like I was expressing it in other ways and I didn't need men to like make that happen anymore. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm sure a lot of it was also chemically. Like I know trans people who like were lesbians and then got on testosterone and now they're gay men or whatever. So, you know, chemically I think it can change your sexuality, but also just in terms of how I felt comfortable and how I felt seen as my gender was like reflected within my sexuality. And like when I started becoming attracted to women, it wasn't just like, oh, now I'm looking at a woman on the street and I think she's hot or I think she's cute and attractive and I want to ask her out or whatever. Like a lot of it had to do with like a shared connection and like how I see myself, and like in relationships with women I feel like I can fully be a woman in a way where it's not being like distorted. Like sometimes I feel like with men that like they don't understand what it's like to feel like a woman, and so then I don't feel like I'm being seen because they're seeing me through their own lens of womanhood, which is like incorrect. So I think that's a big turnoff about men, where like I don't feel attracted to them because I don't feel like I can connect with them in like a way where I'm feeling seen. But like with women, and specifically with Sapphic women, and even probably a lot of Sapphic non-binary people as well, that like they understand, at least to some degree, what it's like to feel like a woman. I know non-binary is such a broad term, which is good for a lot of reasons, but I know that it's not necessarily like you can be Sapphic and non-binary without ever having to feel connected to womanhood. And I don't want to like discredit that, and I don't like when people are like, oh, non-binary people are basically just women, but they're like a little different or whatever, because I think obviously everybody's identity should be respected. But I think like for me, where I feel connected to Sapphic people, it does tend to be with women or people who feel some connection to womanhood, even if like by and large they're like not connected to womanhood. But also I don't have a lot of experience with Sapphic people. Like I said, my ex was a lesbian, and my most recent partner, things are kind of up in the air with them. They are transitioning, but they're like, I don't even know how to get into that, but really the only like Sapphic relationship that I had was with my ex from 2019, which was like 2 years long, but we were kind of on and off. And then like my last relationship, I was with someone who had never been with a woman before and was kind of like figuring out how they felt, and like felt like Sapphic towards me, but also didn't really feel like a woman in general. And like now they're feeling more like a guy, still non-binary, but like a non-binary guy-ish, but like feminine. But like, so that relationship was a little confusing when it came to my identity, but I was definitely into them and I wanted to like give it a shot and see how I felt. But other than like those two people, I haven't had a lot of experience with Sapphic people, and like I don't think my most recent ex would consider himself to be Sapphic anymore, or that like I don't know how much that term really resonated with him in the first place, even when he was like more aligned on like the like girl side of things. But anyway, so like a lot of what I'm talking about regarding my sexuality is like my like understanding of myself, but it's not necessarily based in like a whole lot of experience. But I will say that I do think my gender and sexuality are intertwined, and that in Sapphic relationships, especially with women who are gender nonconforming, I feel like very seen and understood, and I really like being gay. I know that might sound kind of funny, but I like being with somebody who understands the nuance and the complexities of gender identity and gender expression, and that like we're not just one thing all the time, we're so many things, and where instead of things being reductive and limiting, things are expansive and growing. And I think I am able to find that in Sapphic spaces in ways that I have never been able to find that with men. And now that I feel more comfortable with myself, I don't need men in order to express my femininity. And in fact, the femininity that I was feeling like I was expressing with men wasn't really aligned with the type of femininity that I identify with now. So that's why I'm not really like attracted to men anymore, because I don't really get anything out of it, and it just doesn't, I'm not like attracted. I don't know. It just like changed over time. What really triggered for me questioning things, and like being able to be where I am now, because like now I guess I should have said this in the beginning of the video. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm like okay with they, them, I think, but I don't think it really feels validating to me. And there are times where someone calls me they, and then I'm like, but I think, I don't know. They, them is kind of up in the air, but I know I do feel really secure in she, her. So like, that's what I've been going by for a little while. And what really kind of set that into motion, around Christmas time of 2023, I was walking around the mall in mostly men's clothing, and I got super triggered. Like, this like immense wave of dysphoria came over me because I was looking at the like female clothes on the mannequin, and I was like, oh my god, like I want to dress like that, I want to look like that, I want like my hair long. Like, I just had this vision of myself that did not match how I was looking at the time. And I ended up going home and was like upset because I literally had no like women's clothing. I was like desperately wanting to like dress like that, and obviously I don't always want to dress that way, because like, look at me, I've been in a pretty androgynous phase recently, but there is this very like traditionally feminine part of me that exists, but I also still want to look queer, which is why I have the piercings, so you don't like think I'm like straight, you know. But that kind of like hit me upside the head when I was feeling that wave of dysphoria, because that is how I used to feel consistently prior to coming out as trans, where I would like daydream about being a girl like literally 24/7. And the feeling of dysphoria was very familiar, but I was not expecting it, and it kind of hit me, and I was like, no, I have to deal with this. I have to deal with this. And I remember I like came out that Christmas to my close group of friends. We were having like a Christmas party, and I was like, yeah, like I'm adding she, her to my pronouns, and I was like kind of explaining to them, and I felt really nervous to do that, but they've always loved me no matter what. Like, I wasn't afraid of rejection. I've always had such embarrassment when it comes to like expressing femininity, specifically in a womanly way. Like, if it's androgynous, then it doesn't like matter as much to me, but when it's like specifically regarding like womanhood or things that are aligned with womanhood, I feel so much shame because of being raised in a transphobic household. And I don't know, there was just so much shame around it, but I told them, like my friends, and I felt good about it, and I had just started dating somebody who's trans themselves, so obviously they were accepting and started using she, her for me and stuff. And it still made me really nervous, because when I came out as non-binary, one of the things that made me feel really comfortable with that is that it was hard for people to make an assumption about how I was born, like meaning like, was I assigned male or female at birth? And I think from the feedback that I've gotten from strangers and people I know personally, the general assumption was that I was assigned female at birth. And, you know, I wasn't, but that felt really validating for me. It was easy for me to like pass as an androgynous person who happened to be assigned female at birth, but I felt nervous about being a woman, regardless of how I'm dressing, saying I want to use she, her pronouns, because I felt like people would assume that I was a trans woman, which I am, but people assuming that felt really threatening to me and felt like I wasn't really secure or confident enough to do that without, like, I don't know, just feeling rejected even if they don't reject me, or thinking that they're seeing me as like basically just a guy or something if I'm dressed like this. Like, I felt like strangers, specifically straight cis strangers, would misunderstand me if I was identifying as a woman, whereas they would understand me more if I was identifying as non-binary. But even though like womanhood is it means something to me, I didn't feel like they would see it the way I did. So that was very difficult. And I also just had so much shame around being trans that like for a long time I felt like if somebody knew I was assigned male at birth, I would feel so awful, just awful. So it took me a while to feel confident enough where I was like, you know what? If people assume I'm a trans woman, it's fucking okay. Like, it's actually okay. Even if they hate me for it, it's literally okay. Like, you have yourself, you have your close friends, you have so many people who support you. Like, fuck the haters, you know? Whatever. So that's been helpful to feel more secure. I've also felt more secure because I had bottom surgery a few years ago, and I know obviously bottom surgery is not a requirement to like being valid as a woman or anything like that, but for me it did give me like a sense of security, and it also helped to relieve a lot of dysphoria. So now my mind can be spent on processing things that I couldn't process before because I was just so focused on dysphoria. So it's been like a life changer for me to have bottom surgery. I still never technically like came out as a trans woman like after coming out as non-binary. I just started using she, her pronouns and like put them on my social media, and then like my boss at one point asked me like what are my pronouns, and I was like, oh, I don't know, like she, they, or they, she, or whatever. And like one of my coworkers asked me to, and I said the same thing. And they've all been really supportive, which I'm not surprised. We're like a very queer friendly salon, and like, and my boss is like the fucking gayest straight person I've ever fucking met, and both of her kids are gay, and one of them is non-binary. So like, like I'm not like concerned really about being rejected, but just my own internal sense of self felt really shaky for a long time, and it still like kind of is, but I have like more stability than I did a few years ago. I think I've just been coming to accept that my femininity and my androgyny are like one and the same, and they're not separate from one another. And like I really like that I can dress butch or whatever you would fucking call this, I don't know, and like also be like, no, like I'm really fucking feminine, even though I'm also like androgynous and like kind of like masculine. Like it feels like they're connected, or that they're like you took two things and just mixed them together. And I think I used to think of my gender as like a balancing act, or like that like the femininity and the androgyny are like two separate things, and sometimes I'm this and sometimes I'm that. But now I just feel like I'm all of it all the time, regardless of how I look. Like even when I'm wearing a dress and my hair down curly and like have like my toenails polished or whatever, like I'm like, no, like I'm still androgynous and I don't want, I get worried like if I sense that somebody's like attracted to me or whatever, I'm like, well, would they still be attracted to me if they saw me like this? Or vice versa, if I'm like this and they're attracted to me, I'm like, are they still going to be attracted to me when I'm more feminine or whatever? Because both of those things are always in me, even if like they're not always being expressed. And I think too, for myself, there's something that feels really like powerful and like liberating or something like that. Makes me feel very confident of like being more mask and wearing a hat like this and wearing like men's clothes or whatever, and like, you know, having a more androgynous voice and stuff, and being like, you know, all of these things that people might associate with traditional masculinity, like they're a part of me, but like I'm still a fucking girl. And there's something that feels really powerful about that used to feel really invalidating. I used to care how people would look at me externally and might like associate traits to me that don't exist. But I don't know. I really like that feeling that comes with that like I don't have to conform, and yet I'm still just as much of a woman as someone who does conform. And obviously there's nothing wrong with conforming if like that happens to be who you are, no shade. But I think for me, I really enjoy like this. And I also really enjoy too, like I went through a whole phase recently, like when I filmed my last video, I had my hair down and I was wearing a dress. I don't know if you knew it was a dress because you could only, you know, see me from here up, but I went through a whole like dresses phase with my hair down and like wearing sandals and stuff, which is very new for me. And I felt really like pretty and cute and like whatever, and it felt really powerful to be like conforming in that way to some degree. You know, I still have stretched ears and fucking facial piercings and I wasn't wearing makeup, but still, to me, I felt like I was conforming a lot more, but also being like, I'm a fucking lesbian. Like I can be feminine in the way that men understand it and still not be interested in them. And like that feels powerful too, that like however I dress, however I feel, like it's for me to decide. There's like a lot of autonomy, I guess, that goes on in regards to my gender expression that gives me a lot of confidence and security. I think that might be everything I have to say. So to recap, I'm non-binary and a woman at the same time, and I use she, her pronouns, and like sometimes maybe you can get away with they, them, and it'll be fine. And there are times where that actually, like, even like dressed like this, like I'm like, you know what, it's giving they, them. Like I very much give they, them energy when I'm dressed like this, so it doesn't like offend me. But like the people close to me, I like it when they use she, her, because I feel more seen. And I think I'm finding that my gender is dependent upon how I feel and not how others feel about me. And like that's something that's given me a lot more confidence, and it feels really nice. And I'm glad that this is where I am, and I'm happy to be a dyke or whatever, a tomboy, a gender non-conforming lesbian, a like girly pop butch lesbian, like all of it at the same time. Like I think coming into my Sapphic or lesbian identity also just has helped with the gender stuff, because there is such an array of identities and expressions and all that within the Sapphic community that makes me feel understood and seen, and that like, I don't know, it just feels really nice. And that's good. That's what I want. I want to feel good. I want to feel like myself. And I feel both of those things. So, very happy with that. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Feel free to let me know if you want to. And I will see you next time. Bye.